Hello and welcome to Catholic Parents Online, a YouTube and podcast channel where we share tips and resources on Catholic parenting. This is brought to you by the Theology of the Body parenting team of the Apostolate for Catholic Truth. Presented with the lens of the theology of the body, we will see how we can be a sincere gift of ourselves to our kids in ways that will help them find true happiness and flourish in accordance with God's wonderful plan for each and every one of them. My name is John Hui and I'm your host for this series. Today we'll be talking about sexual abuse of minors and the steps we can take as parents to protect our children. And we are very privileged and delighted once again to have with us Dr. Christopher Cheok. Dr. Cheok is a psychiatrist, senior consultant and chief with the Department of Forensic Psychiatry at the Institute of Mental Health. He was formerly the clinical director of the National Addictions Management Service and head of psychological medicine at Kutipot Hospital. He has published 3 books on mental health and 20 research papers in peer-reviewed journals. Certainly an expert who has lots of wisdom and experience to share with us. We hope this interview with him will give us insights as to how we can protect our children from this terrible scourge of sexual abuse. Welcome to Catholic Parents Online, Christopher. So to give a background to our discussion today, the Child Protection Service at the Ministry of Social and Family Development, MSF, investigated 443 cases of sexual abuse of children in 2021. It's an 11-year high and an increase of 70% from the 261 cases investigated in 2020. That's a lot. This is also a whopping 6 times more than the 70 cases of sexual abuse reported in 2012. Just 10 years ago. Certainly every single case of such abuse is really one too many. But this trend is certainly of grave concern and indeed very worrying, right, for us as parents and for our children. And really we as parents need to find ways and means to protect our children from this, right? So maybe as a start, it might be good for us to perhaps define our terms. How would you define sexual abuse of minors?
I think there are many scenarios where the sexual abuse occurs. I mean, it can be within the home or outside the home. Sometimes many of the cases that I have come across actually occurs within the home, within intrafamilial relationships, and most commonly it's with a step parent and a step child. But we also know that sometimes things happen outside the home, and I know what I'm going to say is just anecdotal. It doesn't mean it's a trend, but sometimes it happens in places where there's an adult and there's a child, and sometimes there is a unequal power relationship between the adult and the child. It happens in schools. It happens in organizations where these sort of things happen, and unfortunately, this is what it is.
Yeah. And what are the causes of sexual abuse? Why do people abuse?
I do think that there are many reasons why people abuse. I think. I'll just talk about the whole spectrum. On the one hand, there's this situation where the opportunities for sexual interaction is limited because they are in small homes. Their social interaction and opportunities are few, so because it's opportunistic, and that's why they abuse. Okay. These are those intrafamilial types. Then there are those instances where it's out there in the open, in the community. And in these cases, there are people who have a certain desire, a certain, orientation and desire. And then they actually they're predatory on a certain young, maybe vulnerable early teen sort of person.
Mm-hmm.
And then this person doesn't know better, they're exploring, and then these things happen. And then there's another group also realistically, because in our society there are disadvantaged families, and sometimes the children from these disadvantaged families seek relationship, they seek attention, and I sometimes it's a very, I guess, undesirable situation whereby there is someone who is a predator who knows how to cultivate, and then there is a vulnerable victim that comes from this situation where they never had a love or attention, and someone showers them attention, gifts, and opportunities to eat at reasonably nice places in your neighborhood. The opportunities they will never have, and they didn't know better. Yeah, so I think these are the reasons why I guess child abuse happens. It's just this unfortunate situation where there is a mix of a predator and a vulnerable victim, and it comes together.
Right. Are we able to recognize a sexual abuser? As parents, sometimes we want to protect our children, right? And then we see them in contact with so many adults outside the house, whether it's in school or in public transport or on the school bus even, and things like that. So how can parents, in a way, be able to recognize a sexual abuser when we see one? Or no, there's no way we can recognize, or at least a suspect.
I think in reality there is a spectrum. I mean, I think that sometimes there are certain people who I guess we are very suspicious of, but what is more scary, I say, I mean, the people that we are suspicious of and we protect our children from them, I think that is the safe zone and confident zone that we're in.
Yeah.
I think what is more disconcerting for parents is that there's a whole spectrum of people that would be, you wouldn't even suspect.
Right.
Yeah. Right. You wouldn't even think about it. Yeah.
They camouflage themselves very well.
They camouflage themselves very well, and they, because we don't know much about them actually. They represent a certain person in society, in the face of our children's development. They are there because they're needed as part of their education or that sort of thing. But we wouldn't understand that. We also don't understand the motivation sometimes of our children too, because sometimes they themselves are exploring. So it's sometimes this very, I guess, unholy mix of enthusiasm and wonder, and then when it's mixed up with the predatory nature of the person, then it becomes that sort of situation.
Right. Is there a kind of like we might say a modus operandi within which these abusers usually work, is such that we can perhaps tell our children, if this happens and there are these people who behave this way, you better watch out?
Okay, I think coming from a mental health background, we are quite, I guess for us, we have ethics. So from a mental health worker point of view, we have our own code of ethics. But I think for the rest of, I guess, Singapore, for example, depending on the organization they work for, it's for them to define their ethics. So I dare say that sometimes that depending on the situation you're in and who the perpetrator is, they really must see where the ethical boundary is. Because I guess if you are in a position whereby, okay, I mean, when it comes to child sexual abuse, there is always, I guess, someone more in power and someone more vulnerable. And I guess the person that is in a more powerful position, depending on his profession and the ethical boundaries that he has to abide by, he has to, I guess, confine himself to that. But if he can't, I don't blame the victim, because the victim is typically a younger person, right? He doesn't understand the whole world of ethics and all that jazz, right? Yeah. So sometimes, depending on where he comes from, if he comes from this disadvantaged family where he didn't get the love, the attention, and someone showers him with all this love and attention, I think he can be very confused.
Yes.
Yeah, he can be very, very confused. And I've seen cases whereby it's inexplicable. It can be understood. I can't even understand some of the reasons why some of these people have done it. And they can't even understand themselves too, why they have done such a thing. But I think we at the end of this all, I think we must try to, I guess, be careful. We were careful with our emotions and our needs, and be able to contain them in that sense.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think if that's the case, right, it would seem that it is very important for parents to, in a way, form a relationship with the children in such a way that the children will be able to confide in the parents more easily with everything that happens outside the home. I would imagine that many of these sexual abusers, after they've done what they have done, or they're grooming the children, they might actually tell the children, don't tell your parents or don't tell anyone else, this is a secret between the two of us.
I think what you say is very relevant. The cases that I've handled, I think many times the family were very disadvantaged. And I think the perpetrators somehow knew that, either knowingly or instinctually. They kind of figured it out, and this is where the danger is. I think if, as parents, if we strive to build that home where we make it a safe environment for our children, we are not too judgmental, so critical. I say this very fervently, that I can tell you that I've seen many situations in my career, and I dare say that many humans, there's a whole spectrum of human existence. Not all children will be the perfect child that you wish for them to be. There's a spectrum, and if we can accept of children that for their ability, their performance, and there is no way we can get the 10-year series child that we wish, but things will be all right in the end, and if I can say love is everything, things will be all right in the end. It will never be what we dreamt of as the child we want them to be, but I think if we can relate to them, I think if we can accept them for the persons that they are, then in the end they will be all right. I've seen a lot of hurt. I've seen a lot of hurt in my career. I mean, I can't talk about it in this podcast.
Certainly.
But you can probably slice this out. But I mean, I'm just saying that we've seen a lot of things, and all what I'm trying to say is that we just have to accept the variety there is in our world.
Certainly. It would seem that what you've just said really reaffirms the conviction that parents, we need to have a good connection with our children and a very good positive relationship with them, such that they can really be affirmed of our love for them, and they feel secure in our love for them, and therefore will be less vulnerable.
Yes.
And yeah. So
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think this idea is that if you find that we are imperfect parents ourselves.
Tell me all about it.
we are imperfect parents ourselves. Our children are imperfect, but as long as we try to bridge this gap between ourselves and our children, and the idea that we are trying to relate, and the bridge that binds us is this idea of acceptance and love. We hope that they will find that the home is a happy, safe place. They'd rather be. It's nicer to be at home. Yes, I want to go to McDonald's and Starbucks for a while, but home is where I'm most comfortable. I think most likely it'll be all right most of the time. I cannot say all the time, but most of the time.
Yeah. I think where the home is a sanctuary, right, for
Yeah.
our children to want to be in.
Yeah, rather than the soonest moment I try to escape, right?
Yeah.
When I wake, I have breakfast and I have my Milo and I try to run out.
Yeah, before the 10-year series comes.
Yeah. I think we, in all the homes that we have, I think if we could try to make this place a safe place and a happy place. A home doesn't need to be a high performance place. It doesn't need to be a successful place where everyone can talk about their success. But a home is a safe place. I think that's more important.
Yeah, certainly. I remember the last time my youngest daughter was in secondary 3 or secondary 4, and I went up to meet with the teacher, and the teacher was telling me about my daughter and saying how much I should be pushing her and things like that. And I said, it doesn't matter. She's already trying her best. I can't ask for more. So that's all I asked for. That's it. And the teacher gave me a certain look and said, "You're not pushing your daughter hard enough." And I was, okay. So I went home. I told my daughter all about it, and we both had a good laugh.
That is, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, with parents, right? In a sense, we want to, in a way, find ways to protect our children and prevent this thing from happening to them in the first place. Is there a way in which we can talk to them in an age-appropriate manner to prepare them, and so that they can know in the things they can do and the things they should not do in order that they can be more protected?
I think that most of the time that at least in my work, at least the victims, in a child sexual abuse, the cases that we've seen tend to be intrafamilial, tend to be female, okay, but outside the home, they tend to be male, okay. Certainly, some of them, I wouldn't say it's abuse, but they are violated because of molest and things like that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to this type of recurrence of abuse, outside the home, it tends to be male. Maybe the women don't get reported. I don't know. Okay, but what I'm trying to say is that within the family part, I guess they need to know the boundaries. I think children need to know the boundaries where touch is reasonable and where touch is not reasonable. And certainly I think that touch, if I may, touch at the private parts, the vagina and all that, the breast, I think these are unreasonable.
Yes.
And we should draw that line where that is.
Yeah.
I think outside the family, I think in the teenage years, some people have curiosity. Some people, wish to explore the world. Yeah, and they find themselves in unusual situations. But I dare say that most importantly, I think is that you know where wrong stops. And legally, I need to say this, that under 16 years old, any consent for sexual activities is void. So even if sexual activities happen and people are party and agreeable to it and you're under 16, that in the eyes of the law is not consent. Yeah. I think that they need to understand that sometimes this power relationship between a senior and a junior can be manipulated. I do not know how to teach people this. It's just that I think parents need to teach people. I don't think this podcast has to teach people this. But parents need to teach people to be careful that in our world there will be perpetrators out there who have their own, I guess, motivations, their own desires, their own insecurities, and their own orientation. And we just need to be aware, to be careful of these people and say, enough is enough.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually talking about good touch and bad touch kind of thing, right? I think there are some good materials out there. There are even some books. I can't remember the author right now offhand, but I'll try to check out, and maybe I'll just put the link with this podcast and some of these resources for parents to look up. So I think they can actually look up these books, and they will actually guide them on how to talk to their children. I think on what is good touch and bad touch, and how to get the children to talk to them if on a regular basis, in order to be able to detect any early signs of danger.
I think what's important is to maybe talk to children about boundaries. Meaning to say that it's perfectly well and good when it comes to peer and peer relationships and that sort of thing. But I think in the schooling years, when someone very, very senior starts to engage you, and goes beyond what seems normal. Meaning to say that I'm not saying that all these things are bad, but when it comes to buying meals, treating you to movies, even I think when someone very senior invites you to your home alone, some of these things are red flags. And we need to teach our children this, because we're not saying that all these things are all bad, but let's say that these things are red flags for you to be on higher alert, to say that what's going on here, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So avoid compromising situations.
Yeah, right? I mean, for a child, they may think it's quite nice, right?
Yeah.
I have special access to my senior and that sort of thing. But I think one also has to see the other side of the coin, to say that, okay, I can go there and be curious, but I need to know when things are getting creepy, that sort of thing, and be able to extricate yourself from creepiness, so that you don't find yourself compromised.
Right. Well, so I guess this is what parents will have to do. Number one is to actually have that good relationship with our children, affirm them well, be there for them, and have a good avenue of communication with them, so that they are more open and trusting when they talk to us, so that we can actually find out more from them as to what's happening in their lives, and be able to advise them if we think that something's not so right.
Absolutely.
So I think these are so important for us parents, right? Now, is there any way in which, let's say, despite our best efforts, right, like you said, sometimes once in a while there might be a possibility that despite our best efforts, our children might still be subjected to some form of abuse? Is there any way in which we can detect early signs of abuse, especially if let's say this a child has been possibly abused, and then the abuser actually tells them from a position of authority, don't tell anyone else, right? Is there any way in which parents can recognize some signs that or symptoms that might really tell us, okay, I think we need to be a bit more careful now?
I think that what I'm going to say applies not just to abuse. It's just that when there's a sudden shift in the child's life, it could be a broken relationship, it could be bullying, it could be abuse, and because the way humans react is not so specific. I think when you start to see a child withdraw from your social life, from meals, to barricade themselves in a room, spending hours on computer games, and even missing school. I think to me, for a teenager at least, dropping out of school is a red flag. Okay, not because of academics or anything, because something is going on. From my perspective, from my work experience, I know I can name 20 reasons why a child does not want to go to school.
I used 10 of them in the past, I think.
Yeah. But I think from a parent point of view, they may think it's just academic or bullying. I can name you 18 other reasons why a child doesn't want to go to school. All of them are nasty. And because the parent, because in my job, I guess I see a breadth, but as a parent, you just see one or two.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess we should be suspicious if a child, number one, barricades themselves in a room, number two, doesn't want to join you for your meals, number three, stops their attending school or social life, and number four, doesn't bother about their self-care, leave their hair long, don't bathe and things like that. This self-care aspect. And I know it's difficult as parents to be able to bridge this. The child will never tell us what's going on. In this instance, if the child doesn't want to tell you what's going on, I think one option is to reach out for help. Reach out for help either at a family service center in your neighborhood or counseling center in your neighborhood. If they are willing to reach out maybe to a professional in the hospital and things like that. But even then, it's still very difficult for the child to even come out even to a professional. So I'm not saying professionals are great or whatever. It's just saying that it's the comfort of the child saying what is really going on in their lives. Yeah.
Well, so it looks like we've covered quite a lot already in terms of the preventive measures parents can take in building their relationship with their child. And then at the same time, because they built that relationship with their child, they can recognize when something is not right. When the child starts behaving differently and then withdrawing. So with that relationship, we can actually be able to detect much faster and much earlier, right? And then at the same time, once we can actually detect these, we can actually, besides going in to talk with our children ourselves, we can also actually engage some help from outside, our immediate family, whether it's in the school or professional services, counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists, family service centers, and all. So these are and of course, pastors, spiritual directors. So these, I guess, are the various ways in which we can really step in to be proactive in helping our children.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. I think you've really covered so much in this little podcast. But maybe before we end off, is there any other words of advice you'd like to give to our Catholic parents before we conclude?
I say this to every time I talk about this topic. Our children should not be the persons that we never hope, that we wish that we never achieve. We should not project all our unmet needs into our children. Yes, I think we will never be able to run that marathon. Yes, we'll never climb that mountain. We don't wish for our children to run that marathon or climb that mountain. I think the skill in parenting is really to be able to understand where we are and what our children's abilities are, and not what we project them to be. And when they cannot achieve what we hope and project them to be, that's where the frustration comes in. They are themselves, they are an individual. And I would just want to quote one of the most very nice poems I've heard. That our children come through you, but they'll never be, what you want them to be. It's so true, isn't it? Among all our kids, they come from the same factory. They're all different products. They're all different products. And we just want them to. I mean, most important is to impart good values. Know that. I mean, the truth is that when we journey through life, there are lots of trouble that we will go through. Just know that family is always a safe harbor. When you come home, no matter what nonsense you have in your external life, in your private life, you'll be accepted in this home. I think that's what we aspire to be. Absolutely. You can't be any more right than that. Fully agree with you. Right. Thanks so much, Christopher. And it's been really wonderful to have you once again to share your time and your expertise and your insights with us. So for me, it has been a very truly eye-opening experience to really, and sobering too, to actually
to hear what's been happening and what is happening, and I think can be rather scary for parents. But I think this is a very good resource for parents to turn to. And thank you very much once again for sharing your expert insights with us. So yes, thank you so much once again, Christopher, and we look forward to seeing you sometime again.
Thank you, John.
Friends, we just heard from Dr. Christopher Cheok, Senior Consultant and Chief with the Department of Forensic Psychiatry at the Institute of Mental Health, who spoke to us about sexual abuse of minors and what we can do as parents, whether it be from the preventive point of view or early detection. So till we meet again next time, this is John Hui signing off on Catholic Parents Online. Take care and may God bless you and your family always. Goodbye.